I really would much rather that this was a editorial in my blog and a letter. But unfortunately, because of the way carpal tunnel is affecting my median nerve, um, or whatever's going on with my arms, um, injury or condition, whatever it is that's happening, I cannot make it a letter, um, which is what it should be. So I'm going to be sorting out some sentences as I go along, much you would sort out sentences as you wrote a letter. I just learned that Queen Elizabeth passed away. She was 96 years old. I don't have much to say about it. I'm the type of person who would have enjoyed being friends with her, but circumstances intervened. And somebody who understands what happened maybe can explain it and expect not to be believed. I don't understand what happened exactly. I know that she was friends with the Graham Foundation. The Graham Foundation had it from me, and Peter Gabriel hates me, and so she hired people to investigate me from the prosecuting service, Amanda Harcourt, and she got identified by me as the royal family because she identified me as you know, the negligent waif to blame for the murder of the Beatles in some strange script that was planted on my house. So, what suffice it to say, although I'm not friendly. I don't understand what happened really. Somebody who explains it probably would not be telling the truth. And so, anyway, dispense with all of that. Everybody has their own feelings about what happens when a very important person passes away. It should be noted that she lived through World War II, and so she has um, a lot to do with the impression I have that World War II for Britain had other priorities than working with the United States of America. Now, what I want to discuss is my position on the Ukraine and define some terms. One of the terms I want to define is belligerati. What it means to me is somebody who enjoys going out to battle. I mentioned Peter Gabriel. The letters were on a timetable. And because they were carefully conscripted to be a timetable, and he had a song called Timetable, which represented their value code, I see it as evidence of the trickery of Britain in the matter of John Lennon, which I certainly had nothing to do with, no matter what they say. And so, timetable, he says things like the weak must die, and that people go out and tell right from wrong through medieval battle codes. And that's the sort of situation, that we have with this hybridizania draft board belligerati from Trumpy Tune Putinese, creating this hybridizania draft board. We're using Ukraine to force us to choose a side and to good effect in your very own Zappa at home PlayStation, which is promoting an idea the Europeans have that supposedly should be adopted by all of us, that property is God. And people who don't feel that way about property are punished because they want to use us as servants of this belligerati. And now, a normal person would say if you don't understand something, you have a right to sort it out by looking at all sides. Um, an example would be from the Ukraine situation, the issue of whether Russian is being suppressed in the Ukraine or what's being suppressed in the Ukraine. Well, I don't know. I've seen evidence either way. And one of the things the United States is good at, the Russians talk against our exceptionalism, but we have some exceptional things that we do. We provide interpreters in all languages, for example, with the UW clinics. And there's a struggle to make it possible for American government to be bilingual in areas that are predominantly Hispanic American. When we talk about Hispanic Americans, we're talking about a society that's not hybrid, but it's categorically somewhat defined by race. And critical race theory compares to the language issue. A lot of people don't know what it means. They see black people who are into race rivalry, which isn't the same thing as racism, bigotry. But some white people don't understand, they're not bigots, they don't get engaged in race rivalry. And they're like, what's going on? And academics, it's a discussion. That's not a doctrine. It's a discussion of issues. And race rivalry can get the upper edge in black literati. And people who are black intellectuals call you ignorant for not understanding issues that you know nothing about. So when you talk about languages being suppressed, the Japanese did suppress Korean language during the occupation of Korea. The Spanish monarch has suppressed Catalan and Catalonia. So it does happen. But how many people in America understand the issue of Catalonia during the Spanish Revolution? I mean, it's an important issue. But how many understand it? I mean, you have to go to school, study it, read, become familiar with unfamiliar things. And you can't just you can, they do, but you shouldn't just use situation in Ukraine as a hybrid Xania for a PlayStation, an imaginary draft board to neo-NATO intelligence circuit. So what does neo-NATO mean? It's a gang that took control of America. They saw us as malleable, so they zapped the Kennedys between their eyes and instituted a new adoption. They got popular, and it's their new adoption code of what it means to be American, and took control. And then they say, well, now America controls everybody, right? But they got rid of the original America that people admired, like FDR and JFK. And they have the shifting intelligence circuit that's part of an international Trump between Putinese medieval idea of combat. Yeah, Martin Luther King looked after an honor code that I think makes sense. Question and answer honor code, dignifying the other person, engaging in dignified intellectual review of premises. I mean, he was a wonderful human being. And if you look at life, I mean, you could have an argument that God isn't so much property as God is living things. And God wants to see all living things prosper, taken care of. And if a living thing is dangerous to you, you have schools that create experts for making their prosperity, but in a benign environment separate from you. Like nobody wants to see crocodiles go into extinction. They just don't want them to have access to kids on sidewalks. So, I'm saying that the Ukraine is coming over as a European maneuver to take away our commitment to civilization, public schools, and the climate change issues. And, when it comes to the royal family, Peter Gabriel, I misunderstood his gaslighting when I interviewed him as conscious irony. That's what I described it as, conscious irony, because I gave him the benefit of the doubt. But he's a very malicious person. And there were clues in his literature that he was a malicious person. So it's not really a good thing that I made a mistake about him, but I understand, that his values are very different from the ones that I see as honorable, which are like Martin Luther King, and the search for improved public education and public practices like mass transit. Um, we hear a lot about the old arguments I had with people at Pitt who see property as God and the fight in the Ukraine is the nature of reality and all of this so-called realists. The thing is, Herbert Agar once said, when fascism is successful, we add that to our facts book, but it doesn't therefore make us fascists. It makes us address the weaknesses that allowed them to prosper. You, Fascism isn't a good thing even when it works, because it's only working for certain people. It's not addressing the issues of a commonwealth. I think where NATO, if there is such a thing, or American educators could be helpful to a situation like the Ukraine is to keep the dialogue alive about how European oppression has manifested its oppression of languages like it did in Catalonia and Korea. And although I like the Japanese, I far prefer Hungary's position in World War II. They were much better at protecting refugees. I don't think, even when we like a star like Ichiro, that we should allow Japan to induct us or introduce a martial climate to our society of the sort that they got over introducing to their own back in the 30s. It was highly destructive, and they have long memories. They can be very vengeful. I think we have to be careful of these tendencies and talk about them openly and make sure they're not um, fulminating these practices through, you know, bogus ideas about um, avenging all insults and stuff the way they do. That's their culture. It's not our culture, and it doesn't seem to me to be. I think it's probably the reason why I think it was MacArthur said they were like children was because they never forgive, never forget an insult. And it gets under their skin and rattles them forever. It's what the 47 Ronin was about. I mean, we have to be careful. The whole situation with what was done to me proves that. And I don't think that the Europeans have it right in their concept of property as God. That the penny is a spirit. I don't think they have that right. I don't think that they should be walking on us with that idea. So that's what I think should have been a letter. The hybrid Zaniac draft board, the belligerati is a symptom of a problem that America has long been harboring because of the subversion of the brain trust of Roosevelt, which included the Kennedys. JFK was very close with Eleanor Roosevelt and replaced it with Sir Mick Jagger and so on. I think we have to be much, much more lively when it comes to discussing all of that. May Queen Elizabeth rest in peace.